What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while since we did a video, but here we are. I'd like to welcome the newest sponsor to the channel, P2M, Phase 2 Motortrend. These guys make incredible parts for the import scene, and they're breaking into the Mustang scene, and that's where we're here to help. We have this 06 that we're obviously doing a ton of work to. They make a bunch of parts for it, and we were lucky enough to get a bunch of them in our hand and put them on the car so we can review them for you guys. Let's go ahead and look at what they have. All right, so like I mentioned, P2M is developing a bunch of Mustang parts, and we're gonna be putting a whole bunch of them on our 06 project car. Now these parts are good for all S197 platforms, which is 05 to 14, and yeah, it's a significant upgrade over your stock stuff. Let's go ahead and look at what we have. Starting with the back, this is their upper control arm. As you can see, it is fully adjustable. You have a left and a right handed thread here, and it comes with a Heim joint in the front. So this is going to be great, huge upgrade over your stock stuff. If you remember a couple weeks ago, we put that BMR upper in our car, which we're going to pull out and we're going to put this in. One reason is it's adjustable. Two reasons are I really like this over that piece that's in there right now. I really want a Heim joint over the poly, so we're going to go ahead and throw this in. Also for the rear, we have their lower control arm set. Now, I have one of these rod ends or Heim joints out, but as you can see, the other one is in place. Now, if you ever had Heim joints in the past, you will know that where the ball is here in the socket, there's a lot of space or a lot of dust and dirt contaminants do try to get down inside of that. P2M has come up with a great solution, which I didn't even know about until I opened the box today, which, hey, it's incredible, absolutely ingenious. What they did was, you can see this black coating, they have a rubber coating all over this Heim end. So if I pull this ball over here, you can see that it's one piece. It goes all the way from the center where the bolt is going to go, or in this case these misalignment spacers, all the way out, around, and then down. This is all one piece, so you don't have to worry about dirt contaminants, water, grit, whatever, getting down inside and killing this Heim joint prematurely. When I did the Heim joints on my 68, they did not have this feature, and I really wish they did now that I see it. So that's your rear lower control arms. Like I said, those joints that I just showed you are going to thread in this end here, and again, left and a right hand thread, so you can adjust length while they're on the car. You don't have to pull them off. Absolutely awesome. The bars, you know, great powder coat on them. It feels really well, looks really good, and the bars are decently heavy. These are a solid bar, so we don't have to worry about breaking them with all the power we end up putting through this motor. Moving along, we have this. This is their adjustable Panhard bar for the back, for the rear end. And one problem that you have with these Mustangs is when you lower them as much as we did, the wheels tend to stick over to the driver's side some. That's because this bar, if you can imagine, let's say it's a certain length here at this angle, once you make that thing more flat, that the points or the length in between gets longer, so it pushes that rear end over. The way to fix it is right here with this adjustable Panhard bar. So what we're gonna do is pull the stock one out, we'll put this one in, put the car back on the ground, and we'll be able to really quickly go back and forth from left side to right side on the car and measure that gap between the outside of the fender and the tire and make sure that rear end is exactly where we want it in the car when we're done. Now we'll move ahead to the front. P2M again makes an outer tie rod end. These things have the exact same powder coating on them. Also, it runs the same Heim joint with that boot on it. As you can see here, it's all one piece rubber, and it goes all the way up to where that bolt is going to go through. One piece all the way around. So again, all that's going to do is keep dirt and contaminants and all the gross yucky crap out of that joint, so it will help it last longer. Now what they do give you is this adapter, and what it is up here on the top it has a taper. Let me get that a little closer for you. So that has a taper here that goes into the factory knuckle, and then down here on the bottom is a straight shoulder, and that's going to go through that rod end much like that. So these are a direct replacement for your factory components and a big upgrade in my opinion. Let's go ahead and start getting them on the car. So here we are looking under the back end of the car. It was already up on the hoist, so it's real easy to walk over. And you can see right here, this bar that runs across, this black one, that's the factory Panhard bar. Like I said, if you take these 2 points, the more flat you make it, it's going to shove the rear end over this way to the driver's side. And that's why when you look at our car from the back end, the whole back end looks like it's offset over that way. Also, if you look at the gap between the outside of the fender and the tire, it's a lot less on the driver's side than it is on the passenger. So we're going to go ahead, pull out this bolt on here and the one bolt down here on this side. That'll allow us to pull that factory Panhard bar out. We're going to put their adjustable Panhard bar back in, and we are not going to set that distance that we need until the car's sitting down on its weight and moved over to the hoist, the drive on. The reason that you don't want to do it here is because right now the suspension is drooped, it's hanging down, and when you squish that suspension up, it's going to change that location. So what we're going to do is we are going to pull all the bolts out of this stuff. I'm going to do the Panhard bar first. Then we're going to move over here and we are going to pull out this bolt right here, and then there's one up here in the front. That's going to allow us to remove that lower control arm. We're going to bolt their control arm into place, and we're going to do the same on the driver's side here. Once all of these bars are sitting there in place, then we'll go ahead, we'll put it on the 4-post drive-on hoist, which will get the car down on all of its own weight, and we can start adjusting to make sure that we can adjust that pinion angle. We're going to go for -2 degrees or 2 degrees pointed downward. That way when you launch the car or you get on the throttle real heavy, it's going to kind of flatten out like this as the car squats and go back to 0. So we're going to set that upper link in place, again not adjusted at all, and then once we get the car down, we'll use that adjustable upper to set that pinion, and we're going to set the length of our lower control arms here based on a measurement from the front to the back to make sure this thing's tracking pretty straight. Again, let's go ahead and get this thing going instead of talking. Let's do it. All right, so getting started on this rear Panhard bar, and the first thing that we have to do is drop the rear sway bar just down a little bit. What I'm going to do is take the bolt out of the top dog bones, one right there and one there. We're going to pull those 2 bolts out of it, and we can swing that thing down, giving us access to the bolt. Two out. Okay, now that that's out of the way, we're gonna go back up, pull this bolt out and this bolt. Panhard bar is free, and that's all we need to do, get the old one out of there. Next thing we gotta do is put the new one back in. All right, pull this one out, this one. Come over here, pull this one out. Of course, don't wanna come. There you go, that's out of there. Now we should be able to grab a pry bar and just, all right, so we got our pry bar. We're just gonna give this thing a little pry. That should start bringing it down like it is. I wonder if you can hear this on camera, but it's like this thing's full of sand. Huh, that's weird. But anyways, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the P2M now. I'm gonna slide the factory bolts through this into the P2M, and that should get us roughly the same length. I understand that it needs to be shorter, but that'll give us a good ballpark of where we're at instead of having it 3 inches over one way or 3 inches the other. So that's what we're gonna do right now. There's no sense boring you. Like I said, I'm just gonna put these through and adjust that thing until the bolts slide in, and we'll go ahead and get it back up. All right, so like I said, all we did was screw the adjuster sleeve to get it to the proper length so that the bolt went through the factory one and right into this one. Now what I did do was I went and I ran down the 3 lock nuts. There's 2 here and 1 on the other end. Just finger tight onto it so that it'll hold where I have it now until we get it up on the other hoist and go ahead and do our alignment. If you don't have a hoist, you can leave the car up on ramps. Ramps, those like wooden jingle block things that you can set your car on. You can put it on axle stands as long as it's on the axle itself, so the car would be at ride height, like all the weight's down on it. Then you can adjust it. For us, we're gonna throw it on the 4-post and we'll be able to adjust it real quick that way. Now I'm going to run the adjuster side on the passenger. That way it's up a little bit higher. Hopefully all you'll see when you look under the car is this nice blue powder coat instead of the powder coat and that nut, but it shouldn't matter which way you put it. So all we're gonna do is slide it in here into the driver's side, and it's a little bit snug, but that's okay. We'll work it in, and then we're gonna pop this side up here onto the passenger side, and we'll slide the bolts in. All right, so all I did was grab a hammer and I just tapped on that bracket to pull it out just a little bit. There's a little bit of rust and stuff on that housing, so you know, that's all it is. Pound it out just a little bit, it'll slide itself in, and then the bolt will pinch it back shut. So all we're gonna do here is slide this thing over. Our bolt drops through just like that, and we have the wing nut for the back side. Slide this thing up. Okay, so now that one's started, and the same thing on this side. We're just gonna grab the hammer and we're gonna tap this over. There you go. There we go. So as you can see, the hole here is not perfectly aligned to the hole on the bracket. The axle actually has to go this way toward the passenger side. I'm gonna stick a pry bar in here and I'm just gonna pull this thing over just a little bit, and that should help us line this up. So there you go. I just went on that bracket to the tire itself, and now that bolt slides right in. Again, same thing. We have our little wing nut. We're gonna put this up here and torque it finger tight. And what we're gonna do is we are going to go ahead and just zip that up with the battery impact and get it just snug. Again, we're not going super tight. Like I've told you a million times before, what you want to do is get everything that you're going to be changing on, get it all finger tight, and then once you get it ready to go, you can snug it all down. Now, much like we did on the upper arm there, if you remember back a couple videos, what you want to do is get the bolts in there, get it snug, get the weight down on that vehicle, and then tighten it. Again, if you were, let's say this is going to be on this angle when the car is drooped like it is right now, you tighten that thing. If you had a poly joint or a rubber joint here, when you put the weight of the vehicle on it, it's going to put a twisting motion in the inner race here that the bolt clamps on, and what that does is it rips the rubber, or it's kind of hard on the poly to, you know, be super torqued down and then pulled that whatever 45 degrees or whatever it is you put it back to. So what you want to do is just put that in kind of snug, get it in the vehicle, get all the weight and everything down on it, and that will kind of do this. And then where it's sitting like that, that's where you want to snug it down. When you lift the car up and the car goes into full droop like it is right now, the axle's hanging, yes, it will have some of that opposite rotation to it. It's going to pull this down a bit, but for the amount of time that it's up like that, it's not a big deal and there's no real weight on it. So again, put it up, snug it all down, get it ready to go, and then zip it all down home. All right, so just like that, we got them just zipped up. What I did was I went until I watched the bracket here that we just kind of tapped out with the hammer. I watched until that started to pull in, put it in reverse and just gave it a little burp. That just kind of spreads out a little bit backward. So there's no real tension on those bolts right now. And that's it. Your rear Panhard bar is done. If that's all you were doing on your project, it's good time to stop, but for us, we're gonna move forward. Now we wanna take off this bolt back here. This is on the axle side, and we also have a bolt right here. Now, you can see that this e-brake cable that I'm moving with my hand, the e-brake cable goes through the factory control arm. So what we're gonna have to do is pull the wheel off, and we can undo the e-brake cable from the caliper, and then we can fish it back through this control arm. That'll give us, once the wheel's off, that'll give us some added access to this bolt here. And then this one, our hoist is kind of in the way, but I think what I'm gonna end up doing is I'll put my two safety stands that I have here, one on each side. I'll lift the back of the car up, and I can move that arm out of the way so we can get to where we need to be. All right, so this is a real tight view of the driver's side caliper, but you can see this kind of T-nut right here, and that's what our e-brake cable is. So what we want to do is pull this black part here downward. That's going to give us a little bit of slack on this thing, and we can pull it out this way over the top and then twist, and it'll come right out. That's how you disconnect your e-brake from the caliper. Okay, so here's a different view of what we got. We're gonna be pulling this bracket right here down. That's gonna allow us to get this cable right here to pop free. And then we have one little C-clip right here. It just slides fore and aft in the vehicle. So we're gonna slide it out back toward the camera, and that'll get this cable out of the way. We can fish it back through that control arm. All right, so like you remember, I had the puck of the hoist right underneath the front bolt of this control arm, and that's usually where I pick up something like this. Now, because I need to get to this bolt to remove this arm, it's not gonna be good enough there. So what I did was I put a safety stand in the front of the car under the engine cradle, and I put one here under the backside of the control arm that we're gonna be removing. And what I did was I lifted one side at a time. I picked this side up, and I pulled the puck off that usually sits on top of this arm right here that was over here. I just took the arm, swung it out around the outside of the vehicle, pulled that puck out, swung it back. So now the car is sitting on this pinch weld on top of the hoist arm. Again, it's not going anywhere. Did the same thing to the other side, and then I returned my one safety stand to the center of the axle in the back, and the one is still in the front on the engine cross member. Now we're ready to start pulling this thing apart further. So what we need to do is we already disconnected that the connection up at the caliper for the e-brake cable. So now that that's out, we could fish the e-brake cable through the factory control arm as you see here. And all we need to do is pull these two bolts out. That thing will come out of place. Let's go ahead, we'll pull the other e-brake cable down, and we'll loosen these bolts and get them out. All right, so not a ton of room between the bolt and this side of the car, so we're gonna use our ratchet wrench, and we're just gonna zip these out of here. They have capture nuts on the back side, so you only have to worry about this one side here coming out. All right, so I just got this front bolt out. Now with that one out, we can kind of twist it like that, get our back one, and that's it. Here's your factory control arm out. These bushings, just looking at them, don't look absolutely horrible. Definitely not like the one that we pulled out of the upper link there, that third link. Okay, now, when you go and do the, pull the bolts out, you're gonna see one is longer than the other. The shorter one goes toward the front. And when you look at the Phase 2 Motortrend arms, you have this one here, that's the misalignment spacers here on the top and bottom are pretty tall, and this one here where they're pretty small. So that's gonna tell you that the small ones go to the front, the large ones go to the back. Now what P2M did was they put this little notch, let me see if you can see it there. See that little groove in the blue powder coat there? That's always on the side that has left-hand thread. So what you want to do is you want to have both of your arms in the same orientation so that you turn them the same way to adjust them in and out. There's nothing worse than going to one side of the car and, you know, having to undo your thought process from the other because you put the link in backwards. Now, lucky for us, again, one of these is tall and one of them is smaller, so that kind of dictates where it has to go. But what you want to do is make make sure that that little notch is on the tall side or the wider side on both of them. So now that this is apart, or that arm is already out, the factory one, we're going to take this bolt here, slide it through, and we're going to come back to the back. Same thing, go like this, and it looks like this arm has to come, or this axle has to come forward a little bit. It must have just moved just a little bit from when we pulled the other one, so I'll grab a pry bar, pull it forward just like we did with the Panhard bar, and slide this bolt home. That's it, that's your install. Now, this e-brake cable used to go through the factory arm, so what we're gonna do is drop a couple zip ties, or you can run a hose clamp if you'd like. You know what, maybe a hose clamp would be better. It's metal, won't go break if something hits it, a stick or something. So yeah, we're gonna use a hose clamp. We'll put a hose clamp around here, and then we'll drop it up over back and hook our e-brake back up. But that's all you need to do to install a set of the P2M rear lower control arms in an S197 Mustang. Super simple. I bet you I haven't even been out here an hour yet, and I've done the rear Panhard bar and almost essentially both lower control arms in the back, and I was taking time out to make a video with you guys. So yeah, if you're waiting for something to do, or you got a little bit of that COVID money from the government, great way to spend it. Okay, so we got these in. I'm just gonna zip tie this up, and again, same thing with the Panhard. We're just going to finger tight these bolts. That way, once we get it down on the ground, we'll be good to go. I will tape measure and line this thing the best that I can. It'll get real close, and then what we're gonna do is when we go to the alignment shop, we'll have them do all 4 wheels, and that'll get these things dialed right in where they need to be. Easy enough. All right, so I didn't bore you guys with doing the upper arm. If you're interested on how to do that, just go back in the video list, or you know what? I'll just link it right there. So you can click on that and you can review how to do that upper third member, the anti-hop bracket as they so genuinely call it. But yeah, you can see I just added a little hose clamp right here, and that's gonna hold this e-brake cable nice and tight. I will have to loosen that clamp when we twist the arm to do the alignment. As you can see, I can still twist it kind of easily. So yeah, we'll tape measure it and we'll get it close, and then we'll tighten the clamp back up. But yeah, that's the whole rear suspension from P2M install, and I think it's been, I don't know, an hour and a half or 2 hours. So that's not bad. 2 hours to do lower control arms, upper control arm, and adjustable Panhard bar. Hey, what more can you ask for? Thanks P2M for the parts, and thanks for becoming a sponsor of the channel. That's all we got for this one, guys. You know what? We're gonna do the front outer tie rods tomorrow, so look forward for the video on that. But yeah, that's what we got for tonight. Have a good one. Thanks for watching, and do stuff. Make sure you go buy P2M parts.